To me, the biggest red flag of a new hire is silence. Like nothing will worry me more if I don't hear from you.
Which is why I think people love going to work with people they've worked with before. You're reducing the risk on both sides dramatically on.
I think a lot of people, you see them say oh, we should hire a CMO because we don't have one, or we should hire this. It's we don't have it, so we need it, versus why do we need it?
The best practice I'm starting to hear from lots of people, and I've run it for years, is I'm going to meet with you every day for the first 3 to 4 weeks.
One of the things that I have yet to figure out to do really well is a really strong onboarding plan.
Welcome to How I Hire, the podcast where we talk with senior go-to-market leaders about how they find, vet, attract, and grow new talent. I'm Andy Mowat, founder of Whisper. Today, I'm joined by Mollie Bodensteiner. Mollie and I met geeking out on data and RevOps, 6 or 7 years ago. And every time I turn around, I'm more and more impressed with her. I find these companies that Mollie on the side, and I don't know how she does it, has installed and set up their entire RevOps systems. Mollie led RevOps at Synchrony, at Deal, and now she is at Engine, which is a business travel platform with over 1 million business travelers, 70% year-over-year growth. And Mollie runs the ops and a lot more. Mollie, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
We've talked about talent for a long time. I've been really looking forward to this one. I know you're building out your team and growing your scope. How do you think about designing a senior level role and figuring out what you need?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really for me, it's starting with the business outcomes, right? We can all sit and put an org chart together and say, oh, I feel like we need this or we need that based on past experience, but really taking the approach of what are the business outcomes? How do we work backwards and think about, defining the scope, the success metrics, and being just ruthless on what does winning look like for this person, right? Whether that's revenue targets, operational efficiency, market expansion, what are we expecting this, executive senior level role to contribute? And where are the handoffs, the dependencies? One of the big things I think, especially in a hypergrowth phase company is are you going to run into territorial conflicts later, right? Identifying what the growth path is, what that looks like, how the scopes could change. And the role should feel inevitable given the business strategy, not trying to fit a person in a box. I think a lot of people, you see them say oh, we should hire a CMO because we don't have one, or we should hire this. It's we don't have it, so we need it, versus why do we need it? And how do we expect them to contribute? And really doing that to define upfront versus the blanket statement.
I like that. Given how metrics oriented and numbers you are, that totally makes sense and fits. Do you ever, or have you ever been a place where you've hired an athlete? And not by athlete, I don't mean played softball or played baseball or football, but are you hiring for specific skill sets, or are you sometimes finding those athletes and trying to put them in the right places?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you come across somebody too, and it's what's the right seat on the bus, right? There's somebody we want on the bus, but maybe, and I've done this with some people that I've talked to of we've interviewed somebody and I'm man, you are a killer. I want you on the bus. Let's go figure out the seat for you, and know that you can provide value up front, and let's figure out what that looks like and shape that versus again, trying to fit the person into the role. And I think you have to have that mindset, especially again, that flexibility as you're growing, as you're scaling and moving, just finding those right people that not only fit the cultural skill sets, but can be, you call them athletes, right? Be those pitch hitters and can jump into those different areas.
One thing I love doing in RevOps, Mollie, is taking maybe your star player and giving them other responsibilities across other parts of the team. Have you ever done that? Or do you always go hire externally? So say you've got a rock star SOPs person and you've got an opening in MOPS, will you move people around?
Oh, for sure. Right. And I think one of the more interesting ones I've moved around before is somebody in enablement going into operations, right? Haven't done that necessarily at Engine, but have done it at other companies. They know your processes like the back of your hand. They know your stakeholder management. They know how to teach them and train them, which a lot of times us as RevOps people, especially systems thinkers are some of the worst enablers.
Yeah.
Right. Because we just think everyone should know how to do it because we built it. So they should just figure it out. But getting those right enablement people in on the ops side, become a game changer because they just help just they know the business so well and know how to like articulate and translate it in a way that a lot of times the systems people can't.
I love that. I'm a big fan of like junior level. You get SDRs, you get CSMs, you get support people, or like the junior level ops roles. Up until like the last two go rounds, I'd been hesitant to bring in to shift people around within company, but I found tremendous success. Like if you tick like ops, you know the systems, you know the business systems team, you know the way the company works. I think those can be massively successful as well.
And you think about like that career path that you just mentioned, right? You get a lot of times the SDR moves into enablement, right? And then if you start moving that enablement into like the ops role, like think about that. Like you've got the seller, you've got the enablement, you've got the ops piece. And like that's a well-rounded employee that you've now just given like tremendous career growth to and like value into the company.
I agree. We could probably talk about those junior level ops mobility things forever, which we could geek out on, but I'm a huge like I almost never hire junior level ops externally at companies. I'm always going internally. But we're here to talk about senior roles. So say you've mapped out one of those senior roles and you know you need it. Do you post it? Do you work with your recruiting team? Do you work with your VC? Like how do you source for those roles? You were talking before we joined about just the power of referrals as well too.
Yeah, I generally try not to post anything if I don't have to. My first principle is like try to use your network, use the resources you have available to you to identify the right referrals and how to bring in. There will be times like you will need to post, right? And like you will need to use external talent partners or things of that nature. But like my first pass is like, if you can do at least a 2-week turnaround on seeing like what you can dig in from network, from referral, making sure you're not doing it just through your network, right? Like your network is only as good as your network. So make sure you're leveraging other people's networks. That's one area where I do lean heavily like onto our VC teams as well, right? So like they're, strategic partners, not just sourcing engines, but like using them to like help identify talent. Also have them read job descriptions for me and like validate like, hey, does this feel right in terms of like what I'm thinking about or how I'm thinking about this? Is there anything missing? They're close enough, but far enough away to have a good perspective. How else I use VCs, and then I can talk through this, is like, they're really good at like, again, they're close enough, but they're far enough away to like look at a candidate's background and say like, ooh, did you think about this red flag? Or, thinking about maybe asking this or that, as well as like good for backdoor reference checks, right? We're all a little Kevin Bacon and know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So like continuing to span that web a little bit too.
Yeah, no, it's fun to sit with VC talent partners and just watch their pattern recognition, the frame of reference they can do. It's so amazing to see because they see orders of magnitude more than the typical hiring manager does.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, I mean, in terms of posting, like generally, again, best people I've hired have been ones that haven't been posted, right? And like, I think I've gotten lucky with some posted roles, but they're few and far between versus the ones that come truly through referral, through network, through kind of that back channel.
That's awesome. Why don't you post, Mollie?
Noise more than anything, right? It's noise, it's credibility. It's, I want to, when you are working, it's kind of like, I'm laughing because I'm like, it's kind of like dating, right? Even though I've been married for 15 years, right? Like you trust more the person that you have somebody mutually connected with than you do necessarily like the cold person where you're earning more of that trust over time. And you're a little more skeptical in that. So like, to me, it's like that friend of a friend component of somebody who can like vouch for this or they know how you operate. They know how you work, like those types of things. Like I've reached out to somebody and said like, hey, can you let me know about this person? And, like to reach out to them. And it's like, yeah, they would not be a good fit, right? Like great operator, great at what they do, but like would not thrive in the culture you're in. It's good to know those things like up front and kind of saves both parties time too.
I agree. I think also if a role is posted, people are going to ping you or your network of like, hey, can you get me to Mollie? And sometimes they're doing that as a favor to them rather than as a favor to you. But when it's unposted, like they're giving you the insights on that. So it's a subtle difference in flip for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. My LinkedIn inbox is still broken from posting a role like 6 months ago.
That's hilarious. How does talent find you? Like what work, to your point, like you're overwhelmed with LinkedIn. I've got you on Slack, so I know I can always Slack you. But like, I'm sure your email's a mess too. How do people get through to Mollie? Like, what are the secrets?
Yeah. If you know somebody who knows my phone number and is going to make a text introduction, like that is worth its weight in gold, right? Like the people who know how to hit my personal line and like, those are true referrals. I think the other thing is like, if you can make a compelling introduction, right? And like something that resonates and matters, like I'll always hear that one out. I'm one of those, like, I'm going to say like sucker for the cold emails that like feel like the person did their research and it's not just like AI crap research, right? Always will give those an at bat, or at least make sure to have the conversation. I've had candidates that I've turned down for jobs who have made introductions to people that would be better fits.
Yes.
As well. Like always we'll hear those out, right? Like that's the motion. I've also turned down jobs and made recommendations of people who would be good fits, right? Because we've all been hiring managers. We know how hard it is. And even if it's not for us, it's like, who might it be really good for?
Yeah, I would agree. I've become friends with so many people that I have interviewed and haven't been fits. And those networks of intros continue to help, right? And
it's like karma, right? Like,
yeah. And it's also like, then they know what your bar and your criteria are, right? So if you've been like, you don't fit because of this, and you're really candid and clear with them, I think some of them have become my best friends. And I have one story where I hired this guy that I turned down twice, and he turned out to be a rock star, and I wish I'd hired him earlier.
Yeah. But like there was something there that like didn't click, right? And like, he might not have been as successful in those roles until it like hit that right moment too.
Well, I think it was because he was moving from Sweden and he was from Australia, and he wanted to live in California. And I was like, "Come on, man! This couldn't be more complicated from the reload perspective." That was the one. So I know you're now doing a lot of like hiring managers of managers. Like, when do you get involved, and how do you like to get involved in the hiring process for people that you are not directly the hiring manager for?
Yeah. So depending probably the level, anything that is a direct, I'm obviously extremely in there. And then anything that is a second level, I like to bar raise. So I like to do a final interview with them. I think that gives them visibility into like a two up manager, right? And like 2-up leader, but also just really make sure, have the opportunity to start to build that relationship. Like anyone who's getting to that phase, like realistically is like a final, it's probably more on them than on us at that point, but make sure like can help to sell, help make sure that they feel like they'll be a good culture, DNA type fit, but also give them the ability to ask questions and have visibility into a senior leader.
Yeah, I like that. Have you ever told your hiring manager, don't hire that person?
Yes, I have. Yep. And it doesn't happen very often, but I think it's also a good learning opportunity. Like, as you mentioned, we've grown 70% year over year. That's not only dollars, but continuing to grow people too. So like, as you have newer people interviewing and going through things, like sometimes it's just, you catch something that you needed to catch sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting if you see it and your hiring manager doesn't. How do you convey that message? Yeah,
so we do retros on those in those situations. So like making sure there's always like the debrief on that, and like have very clear structure into like why it wasn't a fit, and giving those feedback loops.
That is nice. Yeah, I've actually tended to not override, but say my opinion and still let them make the mistakes, because I feel like they learn more that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. There have been, like, the thing that I've sat with is like, there's been not at Engine, but other organizations where I've said yes when like I've said no and like sat quietly, and then it hasn't worked out. Right. So sometimes it's like, how comfortable are you with the lesson, and like at what level you're okay with that lesson? Yeah.
I think it's like, I had one where the guy he learned so fast. It was like, he's like, yeah, I guess I made a mistake. He got it. He had it for 30 days, and he's like, yep, this was acknowledged that I didn't see what you saw. And I'm like, great. And so learn from it. We were talking a little bit about case studies before we hopped on. Like, I would love to, and this is like everyone's dealing with them right now, right? There's so many people that they throw out a case study, and then I see a ton of Slacks from Whisper members of like, oh my God, like, do I spend the time on that case study? Like, how do you think about case studies, Mollie?
Yeah. So a couple things here is like my biggest piece of advice, and like somebody pinged me today and was like, hey, should we just skip the case study? And like, no, you never skip the case study, because there have been so many times that I've been like extremely bullish on a candidate who comes in and just fails a case study. Right. So like truly, like that is your like competency test. That's how they're going to interact. That's how they're going to gauge. That's how they're going to present themselves. That's how they're going to prepare. Right. So like, and that actually should be the way that they do it better than when they're even in seat, because they're just trying to get in seat. And so don't skip the case study. But on the flip side of that is like, now that we all have access to ChatGPT and Claude, you're going to get a case study. You're going to write a case study that way, right? Like we all know that that's the piece. But like, if you don't do your own case study, like you are missing the mark completely. So like, and I might be doing a case study for a role that I'm not qualified to do in some way, shape, or form, but I at least go through the motion of like, how would I structure this? What would be my thought process? Like, what would I want to make sure I'm conveying? Like, does this actually make sense? And then I write questions out of that. So like one of my favorite questions to ask people is like, what did you wish you knew in the case study that you didn't ask, right? Like what assumptions did you make? Those types of things. Like, because the case study is not for you to come and be like, wow, let me present this great things. It's to understand how you think, how you tick, how you articulate your components of that, and like can represent that. Like, I'm not expecting somebody to give me a case study that's going to transform my business. Like, I'm trying to just see how they disseminate and distill information.
I do think there are some like CEOs that are like, give me a strategy. And then they take that. You always hear about those horror stories, but I agree with you. I do think this also, especially if you're an intense culture, it teaches people like how to think can you think on your feet? Can you be in that meeting? Can you get questioned on the numbers, which I think is powerful.
And it's the other part is like, how much time are you expecting this person to do the case study, right? So like our case studies typically last 45 minutes. Can they actually deliver something of value in 45 minutes, right? If you have 4 different prompts that you're expecting somebody to do in a PowerPoint presentation, like 45 minutes, like realistically is probably 5 slides done well that you're talking off of.
Well, it's also like you get to learn how concise people think and communicate, because I've seen many case studies where it's just 5 generic slides and they're worthless. Or I've seen ones where they're just way too dense and you only get through like 1 slide. And so the ability to like own the stage and present it at an executive level is also critical.
Yep. So just to me, it's like making sure like you're setting the right expectations on the case study. You're thinking like the candidate. I think like being able to think, like the candidates are trying to think like the interviewer, but like, are you actually thinking like the candidate and like putting yourself in their shoes and like what that experience should be for them, which should help you figure out like your questioning that you want to put on your case too, especially if you're not actually writing your case yourself. Probably good to know how you're going to question the case.
So given the advent of AI and that people can just throw things in, and I've even heard of people using AI.
And you're going to use AI to write your case study, like probably do your case study, right? So like then you need to be able to like be one step ahead of like challenging that as well.
Yeah. Or have you come up with case studies that aren't AI-able, right? So one we did was we just gave them 5 gong calls and said break them apart, and that worked really, really well because you got to hear what the person thought and was able to say, hey, here's how. That was obviously for an enablement interview.
Yep.
But that was much better than give us a strategy on X or Y or Z.
Yeah. So the other thing that I have not personally tried with mine, but like something that I have heard of others doing is like actually a live working session, right? Yeah. Where it's like, open a Figma, open this, like, here's the problem. Like, let's start flowcharting this out together. Like, what questions would you ask? What information would you need? And you probably send them like a little bit of like initial context, but it's like, okay, we're going to come together and like just riff through a problem and like do a brainstorm working session together, which like, I love that as like an idea. I think it's like, it's got to be the right type of candidate that you can do that with. But like, to me, it's like it's no prep necessary, right? So like no excuse on that, but like come show how we'd actually work together.
I like it. I feel like you could end up flushing some candidates that were actually talented that didn't maybe, sometimes people just let me think myself versus thinking right here. And so I do feel like you could bias a little bit and maybe lose some good people, but maybe that's
Yeah, and I think it depends on the role, right? Like probably not something I do like with a data science role or something like that, right? But maybe some of like the more creative, the marketing roles, like operations role, right? Like hey, like here's the rough process, like we're gonna get together and like let's try to map this out.
I like that. Do you have a favorite interview question, Mollie?
Oh, I have so many favorite interview questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them depend on like who I'm talking to and like what I'm interviewing for. Like I'm like scared to say my favorite one, but it's so good.
Well, you're gonna have to do deep research to find it. So you'll tell who did research.
So my favorite one is to ask people how to describe the color yellow to somebody who's blind. Wow. And so the reason I ask that, and I usually ask it more on like my marketing ones and my operations ones, is like, how do you figure out your ICP, right? Like, okay, you have your ideal customer profile, you have your buyer, it is somebody who's blind. You have to now sell them the color yellow. How do you articulate that, right? How do you take into consideration like their limitations of understanding, right? Because they are missing, the sense of sight and message that accordingly.
That's an interesting one. I feel like, Mollie, maybe you've missed your calling and you should be really in product marketing instead.
Oh, let's not go down that path. Let's think. What are some other ones that I like? I always ask salespeople, like, do you love to win or do you hate to lose? Right. So like, it's like motivation and risk tolerance. Like people who love to win, generally more innovative, like willing to take like calculated risk, hate to lose, like generally better at execution and risk management. Like, so just kind of trying to see like, where do they sit in terms of like their motivators? Always ask people who the best person they've ever hired is, right? So like, and what made them the best person, right? Like what was their like talent evaluation? Like what do they value in people? It's again, some of that stuff is like also like when you're hiring more like senior level people, like do they have a network like that is going to want to come with them and follow them? And like, the people that they've hired in multiple companies. Like, I think that's a big selling point if people want to follow people where they come from, right? And where they work. So, what else am I thinking about? What's an exception? Oh yeah.
Who was the best person you ever hired? You don't have to name their name unless you want to shout them out.
Yeah. So it's actually somebody that I didn't originally hire the first time I worked with them. And I have now hired him at 4 other companies. And so he has, continued to come, or 3 other companies. We've worked at 4 companies together. And he hasn't come to every company, right? It's been the ones that like there's the right fit on the bus for him and where he's going to thrive and be successful. But he's come in just killer, right? He's like the quiet killer, which I love working with. Very thoughtful, really good balance for my maybe loudness, right? But just when you can find somebody that you can collaborate with and like thinks like you, but understands how you think, you move so much faster together when you can almost like read each other without having to talk.
Yes.
And he's got that one down with me.
Well, you're saving yourself a lot of, which is why I think people love going to work with people they've worked with before. You're reducing the risk on both sides dramatically on things.
Yeah.
Maybe you're missing out on upside here or there. Maybe you're not with this guy. But it's like you just know what you're getting and you don't have to spend the 3 months. Can we trust each other? Can I say something direct to you? It's like that they're wired into your methodology and how you do it.
Yeah. If they know my crazy and they still want to work with me, that's worth its weight in gold. So
we talked about your crazy before you took the job. I think we talked about like user manual and stuff. Did you ever write yours, Mollie?
I do have a user manual. Yes. It's always like a weird thing to think about like, oh, I have, a user manual for how to work with me. But I think it's one of those things that's like just so important to just be able to articulate to people like upfront. Like I am an extremely literal person, right? Like if you say it's going to be done at 5 p.m. on Friday and it's 5:02 on Friday, I'm like, what the heck? Kind of thing. So like, I think some of those like little nuances that like you recognize about yourself as like things that are valuable to you of like, if you're going to miss a deadline, communicate in advance. Like some people are like, hey, I said Friday. Yeah. But like now it's Saturday kind of thing, like those types of things. But like just really knowing those things that make people tick is worth its weight in gold. Like even if I have a user manual, like I also still want to know what is important to my employees too. And like the people who I work with and those things, like it's not conform your way of working directly to me because I'm the boss. It's like, how do we work better together and understand how each other operate and what's important to us so we can have that right collaboration.
I always give every new hire the speech of, when you move to a new town, you'll try every restaurant for the first 60 to 90 days. And you're trying them and you're exploring new things. And at like the 90-day mark, you get into a rut. And that rut is the way your relationship will be with me. Like that rut is the way you're going to go to the same restaurants, you're going to go to the same walks. And so I always say to people like, listen, whatever our relationship it is at 90 days, that is what it is for the rest of our working together. So if you want to change it, like now is the time to change it and speak up, because if I'm doing something that's annoying you now and vice versa, I'm going to tell you. And so I think that really empowers people to like create a better relationship long term.
I love that. Like, right. It's like no take backs after like the 90 days, right?
Yeah.
Like,
now, not only do it's the you break it, you bought it, or it's like you can't return it after 90 days, but also like you've put the machine together and that's the way it's going to be. So I spend a lot of time up front figuring out that relationship, because I think a lot of people are like, fuck it. Like, we'll figure it out. And
I'll tell Andy he's annoying me, in like a couple weeks, right? It's like, just tell me now if I'm doing something that's going to drive you crazy.
Exactly. Yes. If you don't give me the feedback now, maybe I'll, maybe when you've been there for 2 years, I might just hold back on feedback. But in the first 30 or 60 days, like, you've got to give it both ways.
And I think as like leaders, right, it's important that we're pushing and asking for feedback on ourselves. I think like a lot of times people aren't willing to give that up level feedback as directly, because there's that intimidation factor. Like on my one-on-ones, like I always ask, like, what feedback do you have for me? Right? Like what feedback do you have? Like, keep pushing that door open and like almost, not to say force people to give you feedback, but like kind of force people to give you feedback, because you don't always see your blind spots and like what they see.
That's why I give that little speech around like the moving to a new town and stuff, because I want to like let it sink in with them that like this is the relationship you will have at 90 days. And if you do not act, there's like, I'm just going to assume that we're good. And
yeah, for sure.
How about AI, Mollie? I know you've helped me out with some of it, programming it. Like, are you seeing it in the hiring process in any ways we haven't talked on yet?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have it. I think you're starting to see it on like the interview screening process, on like just the candidate application management process. I do like on our interviews, like where we do have that recording in it, because it is nice when you're going back and like trying to make sure like, oh, what was the summary? Like, what happens? What were key trends? Like, did I feel like I got enough detail here? And like being able to catch that, because like you're ultimately like replaying a conversation a little bit too, and it helps to remove some of like the emotion pieces of it and actually go back and like see what was said as well, right? In there. So I do value like more of that transcripting. It's like almost like the internal kind of, call recording. Like we're using like the Gong for sales calls, but using something on the HR side, as well as like this just resume screening. I still get iffy on that one. I think I'm not like, again, not fully convinced it's going to catch everything based on like how well your job descriptions are written and like things like that. But it has been helpful for us as we go back and we say, oh man, we need to hire somebody with like this type of hard skill, right? Like maybe it's Service Cloud and Salesforce or something there. We can actually go back and look at people who applied before and like surface that up a lot faster than you would without having something like that set up.
I like that. It was funny. I was reflecting, I think you and I were both probably early on like the Gong chorus wagon of like, how can you run a sales team without this?
Yeah.
And then as a RevOps person, I totally remember recruiting people coming in and being like, can you delete that call? Right. And I'm like, oh, and it's only in the last like year or two that I think recruiting has started to embrace having that same technology there, to be able to do that. And I've never heard anybody talk about how they're using calls to be like, hey, let's listen to that piece. Do your like recruiting leaders bring those calls in, or are you doing that, or how's that working?
Yeah. So the recruiting leaders like will bring that in. Like, again, I think, we don't want to going into Gong because you don't want to talk about like salaries and a lot of those things. So it's making sure you've got the right restrictions on it, from that nature. But like when you're, in the ones that are like the case studies and the ones where you're not talking about comp, and like being able to like make sure you're censoring that out if you are sharing those pieces, like, hey, this has sensitive information in it. Don't share it, type of thing. And like, I'm not sharing any of my interviews, right? I use them more to go back just for myself and make sure like I'm writing thoughtful scorecards and like give proper feedback as
but
well.
you're not bringing them into the roundup or the debrief type things. You're not bringing the calls in there yet.
Not bringing the calls in there yet. I think like there's probably an ability to do it. We haven't gone into that one yet. I know like TA and like people will go and listen to certain calls as well.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, they should. Like, it's almost like quality assurance, like on your interviewing process. We do certify like everyone who can interview has to go through like interview training.
Just the bar raiser concept, right? Like in theory, you could have an AI bar raiser, just like you have an AI sales coach as well, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's good, like to give feedback, right? Like you want to make sure like unconscious bias, like all the like key things there that like you just need to be aware of as like you're working to bring people in to the organization.
I love that. Well, as we wrap, Mollie, like once you hire somebody, and I know you just hired somebody through Whisper the other day, how do you make sure those people are successful as hires? Like I'm sure you think deeply about this, right? Because those are critical to lifting you up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the things, I mean, I have hired, I wish I like knew how many people I've hired in the course of my career. Like that's something I probably should go back and like try to like count at some point. I'd probably miss people, but like one of the things that I have yet to figure out to do really well is like a really strong onboarding plan. Like I always have built an onboarding plan, right? Like, and I try to get it, more of like your stakeholder mapping and like make sure you have the right resources and like those things, but it's never like the full 30-day type plan. It's like usually the first 7 to 10 days if we're lucky. And so, yeah, I'd love if anyone on this podcast has a great onboarding plan, like that's what I'm going to get into. But I think for me, it's like starting with clarity. Like clarity is everything. Like even before you start, like trying to even meet with them a couple days before they start, making sure like you're setting them up for success and like documenting like and communicating the expectations up front, right? Like again, I can articulate it. I haven't figured out how to like put it in that right writing format, right? It's more like how do I almost give them like a deal room for onboarding and like something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's a product that should exist. I don't know.
The best practice I'm starting to hear from lots of people, and I've run it for years, is I'm going to meet with you every day for the first 3 to 4 weeks. And we're going to have an open discussion. And the expectation I have from you is you're bringing questions, observations, insights every day. And then from there, I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell you that. Or here's the context on this. Or here's how to think about that person in this way. And so more and more people I'm talking to are like, that seems to be, and then my COO at Carter did that. He just locked on and says like, I'm going to meet with you every day. And I think at the end of that 2 to 3 week period, if you've got somebody good or not. Whereas if you're like, hey, I'm busy, just go have fun, you're kind of taking your chances.
For sure. Yeah. So I do 3 times a week, but I do a daily update every day. So like send me. And so like what I found is like put a Slack canvas in place, right? So like put the Slack canvas, like have them type questions like as they're going and as they're thinking about them. Like I try to answer anything I can async, flag what we should like talk about and go deep on, or if it's not me, somebody else. But like to me, the biggest red flag of a new hire is silence. Like nothing will worry me more if like I don't hear from you every day with some sort of question in your first like 2 weeks, right? Or like just some sort of like, hey, today's been great. Like I know I've had a lot of meetings, like just like silence is the scariest thing from a new hire.
I love that. It's kind of like you take that and then you extrapolate. It's like managing up, right? Like I think you can even if you tell people that early too, you can dial it in, right? Because some bosses don't want to hear that stuff. They want you to kind of do it. But for me, I'm the same as you. Like I would love to hear from them there is no bad question for the first 2 months. After that, there are a lot of bad questions, but. Oh
yeah. But like, just even like, if you're not like general acknowledgement, right. Of just like, hey, had a great day I just want to know that you're there, right? Like in the world of like, we're working virtually. It's like, if you're silent in your first 2 weeks, like I'm probably assuming like you're not doing anything or you're not doing the right things. So like, don't make me assume, right? Like, let's just make sure we're articulating. The other big thing is like, first thing to say to people is like, give them permission to like challenge, right? Like the perspective people are going to have in their first couple weeks is just going to be straight perspective, right? And so like their questions, like when they're asking like, why did you do it this way? Like that is like worth its weight in gold, and to challenge the status quo. Like in every team meeting I have, it's like, see something, say something, right? Like, and even if you don't know what you're seeing, ask, right? Like, hey, why did you end up here? Right? Especially like when you're growing, like as quickly as we've been growing, it's like, we might not even know, right? Like we might not have even thought about it because we were running so fast, or like the business changed and there's a great reason for it. But like, take that perspective again, like that is like almost the most valuable an employee will be, is like when they have fresh eyes.
Yes. Like I almost love whatever the enablement of the onboarding is like at the end of that, we used to, at one company, we had your last assignment for your onboarding is tell us everything that was wrong with our onboarding.
I love asking that question too. Like of like, just like, what would you have done differently in our onboarding?
I love it. Well, this was amazing, Mollie. At some point, I hope to get a chance to work together versus alongside of each other all the time. But if people have not met Mollie, follow her, her writings, her thinkings. She knows more of the hidden tech tools than you'll ever hope to learn. So Mollie, great to talk today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
That's awesome.